Zimbabwe.
Esteemed members of the press, welcome to our press conference, which relates to the audited financial statements for the 7 months ended December 2019. However, before we get into that, a few remarks. Zimbabwe is at a crossroads. We are faced with a battle for the soul of our nation. Democracy is not only under threat, but it's been bludgeoned by ZANU-PF. The nation is in a state of deep crisis. Evidence of this crisis exists all around us. Our teachers have been incapacitated. The economy has stagnated as we endure the second highest rate of hyperinflation in the world. Workers and the informal sector remain more vulnerable than ever. The interests and property rights of small, medium, and big business alike remain under constant threat. We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates worldwide. Our public health system is on its knees and faces a real threat of militarization. 8.6 million Zimbabweans face starvation. Corruption is killing us. As we speak, the Deputy Minister of Health is facing a probe relating to a tender scam of US $5.6 million. The police continue to brutalize citizens. There has been no justice for victims of abduction, torture, and sexual assault by the state, including the MDC trio and Tawanda Muchehiwa. Takudzwa Ngadziwore is still behind bars as a political prisoner for demanding justice and accountability for Tawanda. This is not right. We demand his immediate release. Many pro-democracy activists and citizens who have spoken out against corruption and have demanded a better society, like Tsitsi Dangarembwa and Hopel Chingono, are facing political trials on baseless charges. Many MDC leaders and activists are in the same position. Ladies and gentlemen, the call to action could not be clearer. As President Nelson Chamisa has said time and again, we have to come together and form a broad front to defeat ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF has destroyed Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF must go. The MDC Alliance is clear about the charge to lead. The MDC Alliance has no hesitation in leading this charge, which is why we stand here today, firm as the nation's only credible democratic alternative and ready to win Zimbabwe for change. We've gathered today to honor a promise we made to you, a promise that aligns with our values and our commitment to conduct a public audit of our financial affairs. Now, many have noted that no other political party in Zimbabwe has subjected itself to a public audit. This is true. As the MDC Alliance, we hold ourselves to a higher standard. As a government in waiting, transparency and openness are at the heart of our financial affairs. We insist on the highest levels of integrity and probity in all matters financial and administrative. The Treasurer General, Senator David Coltart, has implemented systems designed to combat fraud and the abuse of party funds, something that he's going to speak to shortly. We are going to continue to improve and perfect our systems because we strongly believe that the room for improvement can never be filled. There is simply no room for corruption in the MDC Alliance. There's no room for incompetence, and there's no room for mismanagement. We commit to excellence in all our processes because we believe that this is what the people of Zimbabwe, from whom we derive our mandate, deserve. We believe that doing this will offer a strong foundation for all our fundraising activities that are the lifeblood of the democratic struggle. And Zimbabweans, we need you to partner with us on this important journey. The big fights that we've taken on, the fight for a people's government, the fight for legitimacy and democracy, the fight for livelihoods, the fight for a better Zimbabwe, the fight against corruption, the fight in defense of the Constitution and constitutionalism, all require funding and your participation. And we have no doubt, as the MDC Alliance, that the fight to win Zimbabwe for change, the fight for a better, brighter, and more prosperous Zimbabwe will be won, which is why we're championing the struggle. And so without further ado, I'm going to defer proceedings to Senator David Coltart, who's our Treasurer General, to take over the business of the day.
Thank you, Madam Spokesperson. Mr. President, colleagues and members of the press today. Let me state the obvious right at the beginning. Zimbabwe is a rich country. Our country, which is bounded by the Zambezi to the north of the Limpopo to the south, has some of the richest reserves of minerals in the world. We have one of the best climates in the world. We have rich agricultural lands. We have one of the highest literacy rates in Africa, if not the world. We are a rich country, and yet it is true that we are one of the poorest countries in the world. Our people battle to get a basic education, basic health. Our roads are potholed. Our people are suffering and starving. And we all have to ask ourselves the question, why is that so? Why is it that this country that is so wealthy has a people who are so poor? And it comes down to one phrase. It is a lack of accountability. For the last 40 years of ZANU-PF government, we have seen the squandering of our wealth, where a tiny oligarch has become obscenely wealthy on the backs of poor people. But how has that happened? Because they have not been held accountable. They have squandered state resources, national resources for their own benefit at the expense of the people. How do we as a party intend tackling that? Well, it's a basic principle that charity begins at home, that we have to be the change that we want to see in society. And so when the MDC Alliance Congress was held in Gweru last year, one of the most important resolutions at that Congress was that we would be held accountable to the highest international standards ourselves. And we resolved that our accounts would be submitted to an independent audit by a firm of chartered accountants internationally recognized. And that is what we have done. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, may seem to be a relatively insignificant small step, but we believe it is a momentous step, not just in the life of this political party, but in the life of our nation. Because through the publication of these accounts, we are saying we are subjecting ourselves to be accountable for public funds. Most of the funds referred to in this document are public funds that were handed to the party in terms of the Political Parties Finance Act. And we are going back to the public primarily to say that these are your taxpayers' monies that you worked hard to generate. This is how we spent them. And in doing this, we are saying that when we come to power, and it's not if, it's a matter of when Advocate Nelson Chamisa is President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, we will apply the standard that we are applying to ourselves, to every public institution, and to our nation, so that state funds are correctly accounted for and properly spent. So we tender this document today. It is a small document. Our accounts have been audited, as I say, by an independent firm for the period 27th of May, which was the date all of us were elected in Gweru, to the 31st of December 2019. They show that our accounts are in order. It is an unqualified audit that we have received from this independent firm, which in essence, in layperson's terms, states that our accounts are in order. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I fully appreciate that you yourselves today have not had sight of the accounts, and so to that extent you will not be in a position to question us. We are going to make available a copy of the accounts, which have been signed by the Secretary General and myself, so that you can scrutinize them. I recognize that you won't be able to perhaps ask the questions that you want to, but in the spirit of transparency, you can email me, and I undertake that I will respond to your questions in writing, or if you want further interviews, so that you can interrogate these accounts. But I thank you very much for coming today. I thank my colleagues. In particular, may I thank the President, Advocate Chamisa, who has steadfastly supported this call made at Congress and has supported all of us in leadership in arriving at this moment. Thank you.
Members of the press, as is the practice at our press conferences, we're going to just take 2 or 3 questions from you before we conclude the business of the day today. Yes, Blessed.
Thank you. My name is Blessed Mplanga from Heart and Soul TV and Radio and Newsday.
I'm just going to ask you to raise your voice a little bit so that the Treasurer General can hear and appreciate your question.
As you present your audited accounts, there was concern, or there was allegations that there was 2 million that went missing. Now, did your auditors look into that, and what was the final verdict of the auditors?
Thank you for that question. The auditors looked at our entire books of account, including all state funds that came out, and they found that those allegations were baseless.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just maybe to enlighten us on what we should expect in the report, audit report. Can you just briefly take us through maybe when you started the audit, what funds are we talking about, how much was there, just maybe a summary of the expenditure, and maybe the balance at the moment. If there's anything else maybe you can just say, just in brief, this will assist us.
Just a small...
Certainly, I'll give you a shortened version. So the accounts show that our income for that period in 2019, and I stress it was only for the period 27th May to 31st December, was a sum of 6,277,000. The bulk of that was from government, from the Political Parties Finance Act, and there was a minimal amount of donations from our supporters and, of course, membership subscriptions. During the period, we ended up with a surplus of 743,000 Zimbabwe dollars. I'll stress it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Just to know, what is the basis of presenting the 2019 audit reports now towards the end of 2020?
Thank you.
Why did it take you this long?
Ma'am, I'm in a law firm. I'm the senior partner of the law firm. Because of COVID, our own audit has not been completed. and that is the position right across the country. If you speak to Zimbabwe, people have got tax extensions right across the country because the accounting profession itself was affected by that. Its offices were closed, it had a backlog. So that's the main reason. The other reason, of course, is that government illegally cut off our funding this year. We were entitled to $7 million, which has illegally now been transferred to a party that got something like 45,000 votes in 2018. Because of that, we were unable to meet our financial obligations to the accounting firm. Thankfully, we have now, through our supporters and primarily through our membership base worldwide and within Zimbabwe, raised sufficient funding to pay the firm of accountants. We owed them a fee that we'd contracted them to do. They do not do this for free. And so once we had paid them, they were able to continue with the audit. But let me stress that they started this in February. But then there was this long hiatus, partly because of our inability to pay them due to, ironically, government's failure to pay us, but also partly due to COVID.
Thank you. I'll take two final questions and then we'll close our press up. Yes, sir?
There were allegations a few months before that the party is in red. Is this what is also being shown in the report?
So these accounts show that we were in the black at the end of the year. Obviously, with the cutting off of government funding, and I stress illegally this year, this is a complete breach of the Constitution and the Political Parties Finance Act. The cutting off of that money with a membership support base running into hundreds of thousands, and the transferring of that money to a political party that at best has 45,000 supporters, had a critical effect, a damaging effect, obviously, on our cash flow. But I'm happy to report that because of the rejuvenization of our party and our new website and other things that the SG and I have been working hard on, we are back in the black. Only just, but let me tell you, in the context of this COVID-afflicted economy, it is remarkable that we are in this state.
Thank you. We'll take one last question and then close the press. Yes, sir.
I just need to clarify on the figures. You indicated that you received close to 7 million, but you spoke of 6 million in your presentation. You spoke of 6 million in your presentation, and the donations that came in, say, for foreign currency, how would you featured in that 6 million?
So I think that I perhaps didn't make myself clear. The 7 million was the amount that we were entitled to in March this year. The 6.2 million was the amount we received last year, the bulk of which came from the Political Parties Finance Act, which was some 5 million, and the balance of that was what came in from our membership base. I hope that clarifies that.
Okay, members of the press, all that remains is for me to thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very, very much, and thank you, Senator Comfort. Thank you.
Sibarenye mambo, sibarenye baba, sibarenye mambo, sibarenye baba, sibarenye baba.